Good afternoon, everyone. This is Amr Assal. I'm the Associate Vice President for Dermatology at Modernizing Medicine. I've been here with Modernizing Medicine working on the dermatology product and our patient engagement product for over 3 years now. Welcome to the webinar. Thank you for attending. We are actually introducing ModMed Kiosk in this webinar. It's been out actually in the market for a short time, but we really were awaiting some new features that we're releasing in a week to sort of market it widely to our clients. So some of you might actually already be using it. The agenda for today is again talking about just a few slides introducing ModMed Kiosk and its benefits and so on. We'll go over a demo in detail and we'll cover some deployment tips and then just talk about what's ahead, and then we'll open it for Q&A. So let's get started. So what is ModMed Kiosk? It is an iPad application. It is designed to be very easy to use. We've tested it on a wide range of demographics. We really did extensive testing with Kiosk because we wanted to make sure that when you hand it over to your patients, it is really easy to use. It doesn't really cause more questions than it helps you saving time as the patients have to fill in their intake forms. It's secure and it allows the patients today to update, complete their profile, their medical history, and sign waivers. So it increases patient satisfaction. Again, it removes a lot of, eliminates a lot of papers that they have to fill, and it saves them time and definitely saves your staff time too, and it engages your patients in the waiting room. So when they get in to see the doctor, all the information is in there. I'm sure some of you have been through experiences where a patient is with the doctor and they forget to tell you something, a condition they have or surgery they had or a medication they're on, and they remember at the last minute. And now as an MA, for example, you have to go get the doctor, maybe you're going to have to change something about the treatment. So by enabling the patients to complete all the information electronically before they go in and see the provider, you're definitely saving time. So as I said, we've actually extensively tested Kiosk in beta, and it's been out in the market for a little bit over a month. This is some of the patient ratings. We let the patient rate the app at the end, and you see that 58% gave it 5 stars and 3% gave it to 1 star, where we want to hear, as you will see at the end of my presentation, while it's great to get the patient ratings, ultimately we want to hear from you as their practices, how this is helping you and saving you time. So we have here a quote from one of our dermatology practices that was part of the beta, and they indicated that for new patients, they saved 10 to 15 minutes per patient. So let's get started with the demo. So I'm going to switch here to my iPad. So you see here on the, I'm going to tap on the Kiosk icon here. And what I'm going to do first is show you the setup. This is a process that you would do one time only with every kiosk. So this isn't something you're going to do every day. It's just a one-time thing where you will be entering your practice URL. So this does require an admin login. Again, that is for one time only. So the first thing that comes up, it asks you if you want to, what facility you want to register this device to. So if you have multiple facilities, you get to pick, I am registering this device with this facility, and then you give it a name. This is really for your internal tracking. Think of it as a kiosk serial number. So I'm just going to say kiosk 11. And then you get to customize the name that the patient will see at the login screen. In some cases, your patients might know you by a different name than what your name is in Emma. So we gave you the option to customize that name. Could be different by facility. It's completely up to you what you actually want to have the patient see. So in this case, I'm just going to call it ModMed. practice. It does require location services to be turned on, and you'll see why when I demo the part about finding when the patients find their pharmacies or add pharmacies. So I'm going to say continue. In my iPad, it is turned on. We also give you some instructions around what's called guided access. I'm going to skip those for now. This is an Apple feature. This is really an iPad Apple feature, has nothing to do specifically with Kiosk. What guided access allows you to do is lock your iPad. So you know the home button, when you tap on the home button, you get to switch between applications. You can lock that button so that if the patient attempts to run some other application, they won't be able to. So it does require 3 taps with a password to unlock it. So this way, you ensure that Kiosk is always running and that the patients don't switch to another application. So I'm going to skip this for now. And there we are now on, this is the screen that the patient would see when they walk up to the kiosk to be able to log in and complete their intake forms and sign the waivers. So let's now switch back to, the role of the front desk staff in this process. So let's go back to Emma here on the web and pretend here I am logged in as a front office staff. So a patient shows up, they're checking in. I'm going to say, bring up my patient here. And I can then, in their patient chart, enable Kiosk for them. So that is the only step that your front desk needs to do. So the patient walks up to the front desk, they're checking in, your staff brings up the patient chart and clicks on Enable Kiosk. And then it's the facility here. So I'm going to say done. Normally, if they're only working in one facility, this step will not reappear. These facilities are being pulled from their preferences, so they need to set them under preferences here to pick the facility they're working at. So now Kiosk is enabled for that patient. Now, it's up to you as a practice how you want to do it from this point forward. And I will get into this a little bit later. Are you going to hand them an iPad? Are you going to have iPads bolted to desks? Are you going to have iPads on stands? In either case, once the kiosk is enabled, the patient now can go to a kiosk and find their account without a username and password. And I will show you that. So I am going to switch back here. I need to remember the patient's birthday, April 15th, 1975. And let's switch to my iPad again. So when the patient walks up to kiosk, they have an option actually to log in with their portal credentials. Now, we decided to leave this in the product and see if it is going to be used. The easier way is to obviously find your account, which is what I just showed you, enabling kiosk, and then they can come in here and say find account, and here put in my first name, which is patient. Last name is 9. And then here I can actually type, you can either use the calendar or you can type the birthday in. And the reason we added the typing in here is some practices were actually doing that step on behalf of the patient before they were handing them the iPad. So instead of having to look through a calendar and scroll, we also give you the option to type in the information. And I'll say continue here. So I'm in now. The first thing I see is welcome to kiosk with the next button. Look, notice the design. We've designed it in a way that it really works for a wide range of demographics, as I mentioned a while ago. We've seen actually users up to over 90 years have used kiosk from the feedback we're getting from our clients. We've personally tested for ages up to 85, and user had no problems. The design uses large buttons, large fonts. So you should not worry about the demographics you have and how will they be able to use it. But ultimately, that's a decision you will make based on your patients. Next, So the first thing the patient sees is the waivers. And working with a lot of our clients when we were designing a kiosk, we made a decision that the waivers are must sign. In other words, if the patient does not sign the waivers, they get a message saying, please log out or you will be logged out and please see the front desk. So I click on sign here. I get the waiver, I scroll through it. Notice the sign button on the top right is not enabled until I scroll all the way down and I say sign, and I can basically sign my name here and say done signing, and I'm done. It has a check mark here telling me I signed the waiver. And then there are multiple ways to navigate. You can either navigate as a patient through the next button, or you can go through the menu on the left-hand side here, and you can go from one area to the other, or just go to the area that you want to complete, or you have changes as a patient. So let's tap on next here. It takes me to the patient information. Now notice there is an orange banner here that says editing this section is limited. I think I can only put a nickname because the data comes from the practice management system and it is not editable in this screen. Any changes that we would allow the patient to do here would be eventually overwritten by your practice management system. So I'm not going to go through every screen because some of you are familiar with these screens, especially if you use Portal or if you use the clipboard. With the patients that come and visit, which need to take their intake. But you can scroll, like I said, through next and change things. You have also your contact information and so on. Now let's get into pharmacy, for example. And we've redesigned how a patient finds pharmacy. And a lot of our users that actually see this, the first question they ask is, when is this coming to Emma? So this is the way it works now. You say, the patient can say, add new pharmacy. They do in-store pickup, for example. And it looks up the patient's address, and it brings up pharmacies near where the patient lives. They can change that. There is a search field there. But in this case, I will just say, you know what, let's see, I will pick CVS right here, and I'll say add, and it added the pharmacy to the patient. Now, obviously, all of this has to be reconciled by the practice, but instead of having to search and put in zip codes and names, and it's really done through a map, which is much cleaner and much more user-friendly. I could add another pharmacy and then make this one my default, but I will move on to, let's say, medical history now. So this patient is a return patient, so there are things already in their clipboard. Anxiety was selected, heartburn. Now notice if I were to bring the clipboard now in Emma, you will see GERD, you won't see heartburn. So one of the things we did in Kiosk, and that's also in Portal today, is that we've replaced the medical terms with layman terms. So the patient can easily understand what heartburn is versus GERD. Again, we want to minimize the patients running into issues and coming and asking your staff, what does GERD mean, or what does, some other medical term, mean. So all the medical terms in the clipboard, with the exception, obviously, I'll talk about family history because it's not really a modernizing medicine list, have been replaced with layman terms. I can decide to add anything I want. I can say diabetes, for example, and scroll through it. And if I'm okay, I just say next. And I can scroll through my past surgeries. I haven't had any surgeries since my gallbladder. And I'm going to say next and so on. Now we get to medications. And there is either no skip, I don't have any medications, or I can say yes, add medications. And I can say, for example, search for the medication. I'll pick it from the list. I have 10 milligrams, and it's right there. Now, the patient can edit and add a dose, let's say 1 here, and frequency once a day, and save. And they can add additional medications. I can say, and again, I can make any medication at any time inactive if I'm not taking it anymore. And I'll say next. Notice that the application auto saves. They don't really need to click save anywhere with the exception of a few parts, but it's all auto save. As they just click and say next, all the information is saved. Allergies, I'm going to say yes, add an allergy, say no. I'll just say peanut, I'll say unspecified, mild in my severity, and I just get saved. And it's added. Skin disease. Now, for those of you on the webinar that obviously are in other specialties, this is a dermatology instance, so I get my skin disease history. If you're an ortho, you'll get your orthopedic history, ocular history if you're ophthalmology, and GI, and so on. So this is obviously specific for derm, and I'm going to say acne, let's say. Anything else? Next. I do actually, as I'll say, I wear sunscreen, it's 35 here, no, and I'll say next. No, I'll move on to the next. And it's my social history is smoking is unspecified. I'm actually never a smoker here, the default, so I'll change it. I'll say next, and so on. I'll go to family history, add a new condition, let's say diabetes here. And I'll say uncle, and I'll say save, and it's added. I can edit it and change anything I want, or I'm going to just say next or finish and log out while I say done. And I get to rate the experience. I'll say 4-star, submit, and we're done. We'll go back to the login screen, and this is where the patient, the next patient comes up and gets to access Kiosk. So I'm done, and now the information is waiting the reconciliation. And one of the reasons we, as I said at the beginning, we were really awaiting for certain features to widely market Kiosk is what I'm about to show you now, which is how reconciliation is going to be done. This will be available with 5.7, which is going to be released for everyone by December 8th, I think, unless something changes. That's the target right now. And so let me switch back. On my iPad, I am now going to log in as a staff or a provider. So I'm going to switch out of Kiosk here and launch Emma and log in as Jada. So my patient is patient 9, and I had set up a visit. Obviously, the visit might not be there on the notes view. So I'm just going to tap on the patient and go to the patient chart. So this is the big change here, and I'm going to pause a little bit to tell you that this will be a huge time saver for everyone. For those of you who are using Portal today, you are very familiar with reconciliation. It does require you to go through multiple tabs. It does require you to look at all the items that change and decide if you want to accept all or decline all, which was an issue, because what if you just wanted to accept 1 or 2 or decline 1 item and accept the rest? Plus, like I said, you really have to go to multiple tabs and find the changes. Now we've consolidated all of this for you, and that's both on the iPad and the web. It's all consolidated in one screen. You can get it done in a few seconds here. Obviously, depending on how much, if it's a new patient, it might take a little bit longer. But the way this works now is you tap on the first thing, Now you get to see, do you want to accept all, or do you want, so you can do it at the item level. In this case, I'm just going to say accept all. I'm going to open the next section. You know what? I am also going to accept all here. I'm going to open the next one. I'm going to accept it here. I'm going to open the next one. I'm going to say, you know what? I am going to ignore all here. Just don't really, I know I shouldn't, but I'm just showing you, to show you for demo purposes. I am going to ignore all, or I'm going to say maybe I'm just going to accept this one only. So now you can do it at the item level, and then you can get into social history. I'm going to say accept. And finally here, I'm going to say, you know what, I don't really want a family history. I'm just going to ignore it. And notice it tracks the items for you, so you know how many things you've accepted, how many things you've ignored, and that's it. I'm done. I'm just save, and I'm done with the reconciliation. So it's all in one place. It's all, you can just get it over with in a few, definitely under a minute, versus having to spend so much time going to the clipboard and visiting multiple tabs and so on. So we're done with the reconciliation, and I can then move on and spend time with the patient addressing their concern. There's a couple of more things I would like to show you in the settings, and then we'll go back to the presentation, and then we can cover some of the Q&A. So let me close this here. As I mentioned too, everything I showed you, the reconciliation works the same way on the web too, not just on the iPad. It's all just consolidated in a single window. So let's go back to Emma here and just log out and log in as admin. So the first thing you're going to see is a couple of changes, additions here. Now, this is because this is a test machine. There's a lot of kiosks here, but I'm going to pick facility 1 here. And these are the kiosks. Once you create a kiosk, like I showed you, which is the setup piece that happens one time only after you download the app from the App Store, it will have an entry here. And the one I was using, as you know, was Kiosk 11. Somewhere here, I can really locate it right now. But the reason we did it this way is the following. Let's say you misplace an iPad, or a patient takes it with them and they go into the exam room and you can't find it, or you're concerned that somebody might have walked out the building with it accidentally. You can come in here and hit delete. Once you click delete, this will disable Kiosk. So this is really for security reasons, in case someone has an iPad out there with a kiosk and they try to log in or hack into the system. By clicking delete, this instantly disables Kiosk, and the app on that iPad is unusable. So that's one thing. So first step is set it up. Second, you'll see it here. Now, additional custom areas you want to consider is the kiosk waivers. There is managed consent, which is what you have today. You will get to manage kiosk waivers here, and you can add as many consents as you want. And you can add your waiver text, you can add your legalese, and you can also decide if you want to use it in a single facility only or multiple facilities. So in here, display this waiver at all facilities, yes. If I say no, it will give me the option of selecting the facilities I want to use this consent or this waiver at. So this gives you the flexibility if you have facilities in different states, or you're using different waivers in different facilities, that you can then set them up and link them to that specific facility. One last thing, we wanted to give you some level of customization. So under manage sections here, we let you hide some of the tabs. So let's say you decide you don't want your patients to complete family history. You just hide it here, and it will not show up for the patients at all. If one day you decide you want to start using it, you can come back and add it. So you have the ability to hide contact information, pharmacies, insurance, medical history, medications, and so on. We decided that there has to be a minimum there, and the minimum is the waivers. If you don't have any waivers set up, it won't show up. So you have to set up your waivers first. We also had to have demographics there. We want to make sure that when the patient logs in, they see their name at least, and they know it's them. And we wanted to make sure that you have your specialty-specific history. Or the others you can actually hide at any time if you want the patient to spend less time on the kiosk. Finally, there's one other addition to the admin that you want to keep in mind, which is manage kiosk intramail. In fact, more likely with the new redesign of the reconciliation, we might change this in the future. But because kiosk is almost real time and the patient is in the practice and then they're going to go see the doctor right away or the MA, there was really no need, as we do in Portal, with having you receive all these intramails with every update they do. So we gave you the option for now to disable those. So if you don't want to get a single email, right now Kiosk actually sends a single email, unlike Portal, sends one email only with the fact that the patient has changed their information. But if you don't even want to see that email at all because the patient is there and they're in your practice, you can click on receive, you can just disable this and save, and you won't get the notifications. So let's get back to the presentation now and talk about a few more deployment tips here. So the first thing is, how much does this cost? It is $0 to all our users. It is part of the EMA license, so there is no additional charge. You can go today and download it if you want from the Apple Store. Now, just keep in mind, if you download it today, you won't have the reconciliation I talked about. That's coming out in about a week, but it's free of charge. It is something we believe it's part of us working with you as our partners and our clients, and to make sure that we give you tools that really save you time and increase your patient satisfaction. Why Kiosk and not Portal? So there is really, Portal has more functionality than Kiosk, and Kiosk might have things that you might not see in Portal in the future. But Portal is something, as you know, the patient can get on anytime when they're at home, fill in some of the clipboard information. They can get intramail messages from you. So there is things like intramail, problem list, visit notes, results. All of this is in the Portal. The point of Kiosk is that they are in your practice, whether it's a new patient or an established patient, and they want to complete or update their profile. Now, both Portal and Kiosk are in sync. So let's say the patient was at home, they're coming in for a visit tomorrow, they're at home, and they filled some of the clipboard. They completed their past, let's say, the medical history, but they didn't do any of the other parts of the clipboard. And they come to your practice the next day for their visit. They log into Kiosk. Even though you have not reconciled their changes yet, they will see everything they did on Portal. So it'll just be a continuous. They can continue their session as if they were doing it on Portal when they were home. So none of the changes are lost. And if they do something on Kiosk and they then turn to go to Portal, all the changes will be there. So both of them are in sync. What about, what's a good plan to roll out ModMed Kiosk? Ultimately, it's really up to you. I'll give you some ideas from what we learned from beta. So we had practices that decided they were going to first start with a single provider only. So patients that are coming to see a single provider, they were going to enable Kiosk for them. And this sort of ties to a question that's coming up, which is how many iPads do I need? Because that might give you sense of, okay, I get used to it, figure out how many how long the patients take, do I need, one iPad per provider? Do I need two iPads per 3 providers, and so on? So that's one idea, which is enable it for patients for one provider only. Another approach we saw with some practices during beta was to use it initially with new patients only. Now, I can tell you that one of the reasons they took that approach was because of the reconciliation piece, which we've already addressed, because they felt that having to go through the reconciliation with an established patient is a lot of work. But now with the new approach, that's been eliminated. But that is another thing you could consider, giving it to new patients first, and then gradually increasing or giving it to established patients. Again, ultimately, it is up to you. Your demographics, your patients way more than we know them, and you get to make the decision on what's best for your practice when it comes out to how I want to roll it out. Should I shut the ModMed kiosk down at the end of the day? Notice when I was using it, it went back to that screen where the patient logs in. If I were to kill the app by swiping, it will come back to a login screen where anyone with an EMA account can log in. Anyone meaning a staff or a provider, not a patient. And that's our recommendation, is to basically kill the app every night. And just in the morning when you start your iPad, all what you have to do is to log in. Your front desk can log in it and get basically, it will end up on the patient screen. An iPad that is on has things running. It could impact memory over time, over a long period of time of 10, 15 days if it's continuously running. So it's always a good thing to kill the app and restart it. Maybe it doesn't have to be every day, but at least every few days, or maybe every week. But it's a good habit to do it with any computer device that has memory that could end up being used up, whether it's our application or any other application. How many iPads do I need? Again, this really, I think I did sort of a off-the-cuff calculation, and please don't take this as, but maybe one and a half per one iPad per 1.5 provider. I think it's ultimately you sort of, and that ties into gradually deploying Kiosk and seeing how long the patients are going to take and how many iPads you need. So that is something that you will probably just test and play with as you roll it out. So how can I reduce the risk of a lost or stolen iPad? Now, there are, again, so as I said at the beginning, this is ultimately, you're going to make the decision on how you want patients to access Kiosk. You're going to hand out iPads to them, or are you going to have it sitting outside in the waiting room, bolted in one way or another? And we've seen both. I think again, your patients, and you know your demographics more than we do. And I sort of this is really, if you go into Google and do a search under Kiosk iPad healthcare, you're going to get a lot of examples of what I'm showing you on the screen right now. You can get a way to bolt an iPad to a desk and have it on a desk where patients can sit and fill the info. You can have it on a stand, or you can have it in something on wheels, or like I said, you can hand out patients the iPads, and as they use them, have them return in when they're done. So this way you can actually use our upcoming call button feature and tell your staff that the patient is ready to be roomed. So these are just some ideas, and there is a lot of those out there. They vary in cost, and you get to decide really how you want to proceed with locking down your iPad or handing it out to the patient. What's ahead with Kiosk? So we want to save you even more time. Oops. We want to save you even more time, so we're working on incorporating the review of systems in the kiosk. The work is ongoing right now. You can see sort of a sample screen there where the patient will see a review of system tab in kiosk and be able to answer yes or no. You get to decide on the frequency of them seeing the review of system, whether it's with every visit or once a year with an annual checkup, or again, you get to manage that frequency. And then when they submit it, the reconciliation is going to work the same way, i.e., in other words, at the item level. It's not going to be in that pop-up window because that's sort of review of systems and there might be additional questions and alerts you want to look at, but you will be able to decide whether you want to accept or ignore at the response level from the patient. So that's hopefully going to be available. Our target is end of Q1, but definitely in the first half of 2018. We will be adding quality measures, and you see some of those already in the clipboard. So some of these MIPS quality measures will be added as part of Kiosk. For our clients that are using Modernizing Medicine's PM or plan to use it in the next year or so or beyond, we will be integrating. Right now, we're not really integrated with the MMPM or our own product practice management system. So you will see that edit demographics will be included, so the patient will be able to edit them. They'll be able to do a check-in and check-out and do patient payments. That is more likely towards the second half of 2018. But you will see, again, a tighter integration with our practice management system. So at this point, I am going to try to address some of the questions that we might have received. And I'll leave it here on a summary screen while we're addressing. So one of the questions I see here, what is the app name for Kiosk? It is ModMed Kiosk, ModMed lowercase m and Kiosk. If you search in the App Store today, you should find it there. So there is a question regarding some of these additions around, some of these things around, if they're part of the quality measures, you will see them added to Kiosk when it makes sense. It's really going to mirror what you see in the clipboard today, because under the clipboard you will see a tab for quality measures. So Kiosk is not intended to be completed before they show up in your practice. Kiosk is solely an application to be used in the practice. Now, if you want them to complete some of these items, you can give them access to Portal. There is a way to easily activate Portal. You can click on Activate Portal on the patient chart. That will send them an email. All what you need is you have to have their email. You can send them an email and then they can access Portal, basically self-provision at that point. With respect to Kiosk, there's a question about what are Kiosk waivers that we need to set up. This is really whatever you hand out to patients that does not really require them to fill in any name or anything at this point. That is just simply a signature. You can set them up yourself in admin. And this is just exactly like we do with EMA consents today. Yes, with respect to reconciliation, and with one of the questions is around when the patient uses Kiosk, can you do the reconciliation with that count? The answer is yes. Let me see if this question has another piece to it. Yes, so with respect to the intramurals of the lead, and the answer is yes when it comes to compliance. Yes, the insurance tab on the screen, yes, you can see. If you want me to show it to you, I can. It is read only. They cannot change any of the insurance information. Again, that is done within the practice management system. It's one of the things that the patients cannot change. Let me see if I can bring it up on the screen here in a second. I just need to log into my iPad here. What if, one question is, what if the patient doesn't hit the save button? I'm not sure which specific save button, because there is only, I think if you have a model, there is a save button, and there is really no way you can proceed. I think the save button came up with the allergies when I was adding the severity and so on. And I think with everything else, once you click add, the pharmacy is added. Most of the screens are auto-save. There is really no need, even if they kill the app and get out of it, every screen they've already gone by is auto-saved, and that information will be available for you to reconcile. I'm sort of getting into the kiosk here, so I'm trying to multitask here. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to bring up my iPad again. Give me 1 second. So there's the insurance screen for the question that was asking regarding the insurance screen. It will just give them the information that's in the system based on what comes from the practice management, and they cannot edit it or change that information. So let's get back to the questions. Give me 1 second here. I'm going through the questions. Can you manage the frequency of the medical waivers? Yes. You have once a year, every 6 months, or with every visit. So these options are available for you to manage the frequency of the waivers. Can I download? The next question is, can I download the PowerPoint? The answer is no, but there will be a recording of this webinar that will be made available for you. So you will have the recording accessible. Next question. Can any consent form be added to Kiosk? So today, the only consents you can use are the ones that would not require the patient to type something in, that would just require a signature. So that's really the restriction at this point. The next question is, the admin login is only required the first time? Yes, it is only required at setup. If, like I said, you kill the app and in the morning, that login screen that you will see can be accessed by anyone, your front desk staff, anyone with an EMA account that is a staff and a non-patient can log in, and then it will always sit on the patient login screen. Will Kiosk work well for our practice even if we don't have the portal? Definitely, they are independent. Like I said, they do sync together, they're synchronized, but you don't have to use portal if you do not want to. Next question, and I might have addressed this already, can patients pay their copay using this? Again, when we include the integration with our practice management system, one of the things we will do is allow the patients to pay when they're checking in or checking out. So stay tuned, but that would require our practice management system to be in use in your practice. Well, so the question is, can another patient log into another patient's chart if there is someone in the waiting room or the office that they know? So the way the workflow works, like I said, is that I go to the front desk as a patient. We're relying on the front desk here as part of the authentication process, if you want. I'm using a technical term here, or part of identifying who the patient is. So it's really the front desk needs to know that they need to check the patient in, and they'll tell them Kiosk is enabled. Can someone else log in at that point? They would have to know first name, last name, and their date of birth to access Kiosk on their behalf. And they would have to know the window. The enabling of Kiosk is limited to 30 minutes only. So once that front desk staff member clicks enable Kiosk, there is only a window of 30 minutes when that patient can use find your account functionality. If somebody comes the next day and tries to log in as them, they won't be able to because the front desk needs to re-enable Kiosk. So again, we limited that window to 30 minutes only. Is the information in Kiosk available in Spanish? Not today, but we've gotten that request before, so we'll look into it and what we can do. Is the information, are patients able to do the HPI or chief complaint? The answer is no. And I know this has come up specifically actually from our ortho specialty. Now, if you look at CMS requirements, CMS is very clear that patients should not be completing the HPI or the chief complaint. We are actually actively researching this at this point to see what we can and cannot do. When the demographics are enabled to be changed on Kiosk, how will affect the PM check-in process? Will the check staff have the ability to reconcile changes upon selecting the check-in tab? I'm not clear, but basically, so the assumption here is that ModMed PM is there, and we've done an integration with our practice management. In that case, the patient will be able to edit demographics, and I assume as everything, this might be, we wouldn't do it as optional. You can decide if you want the patients to do it or not. It would be just an additional tab that you can hide. So again, with that will come automatic check-in and automatic checkout. So maybe I can sort of I can give you my email at the end of this webinar, and please feel free to send me questions, or maybe Danielle, you've asked that question. Maybe you want to email me and you can elaborate a little bit more on the question. Let's go to the next question here. No, once you ignore so the question is, when reconciling with Kiosk information changes and you ignore an item, can you go back and will it be there still, or it's just gone? If you ignore something, you've opened the tab and you've looked at it and you've ignored it and you've saved and you're done, it's gonna be in the history, just like you have it today. When you go to the clipboard and you look at the history, you will see it in the history, but it'll say that you've actually ignored it. So it's not completely disappearing, but you won't be able to accept it. You will have to do the edit yourself or add it manually at that point. If you don't open a section, and if you, let's say you've went through 3 sections and you didn't open the 4th section, when you try to save, it'll tell you didn't really look at the 4th section. Do you want to proceed or not? It will let you proceed, but that data will still be there. When you come back to the patient chart again, it'll pop up again with that remaining section. So, but if you explicitly open the section and it's been ignored, you're done at that point. But again, you can see the information in the clipboard under the amendment history. Next question is, can you create a box that says my insurance information is incorrect or out of date, that the patient can click, notifying the front desk that there is a change? So we've actually gotten requests similar to that, not just around insurance. Like if there is around anything that the patient cannot change, can we have a way to notify the front desk? So we are aware of this request and we'll look into it. Next question is, can waiver forms be added to the portal? Not yet, but we are in the process of building a brand new mobile portal. Some of you might actually have seen it. If you came to Momentum, we did a quick demo of it on the Android device. We plan to add to this new portal waiver forms. So stay tuned. At this point, I think I've covered most of the questions. If we missed any, we'll take care of them after the webinar. Again, thank you for your time. I hope you found the webinar useful. I hope you find Kiosk extremely useful and a great time-saving sort of application. We, again, as I said in my summary slide, would love to hear from you when you start using it about how your experience is and how your patient's experience is. Again, thank you for attending the webinar and have a great afternoon.